They carried him not to bury him, grayer than granite, more reddish than bronze, steaming like a locomotive. The poet flourished here, disheveled. Who would not bow before votive lamps but to the common spade? The lilac at his doorsteps burned, a fountain of falling stars, soaked in sweat. His back steamed like a loaf in the oven. Now his house gapes, vacant, tenantless. There is nobody in the dining room. There is not a soul in Russia. It is the way of the poet to search for sanctuary. He goes hatless, as people do in church, through the murmuring fields to the birch grove and the oaks. In the flight is his victory. In his retreat, an ascent to pastures and planets far from lying dormant. Forests shed their crowns of leaves, but powerfully underground roots twist and thrust like a gnarled hand. That was written in 1960, translated by Stanley Kunitz. The purpose of this evening is to remember people's legacies. I'm the editor of a journal called Center Point Now, which is published by the World Council of Peoples for the United Nations. Sherrill, Kazan, a little bit to my right, is the president of that organization. And thanks to Orensanz and Orensanz, we had the honor to publish some of Andrei's poetry in our last edition of our journal, which goes to all of the United Nations member states and academia. And the resonance of that was great, because in that way we were able to take poetry that was that is immortal, but that was perhaps more known some years ago to a new generation. And this evening, in light of Andrei's passing, we want to pay homage to his poetry, to the efforts during his lifetime to raise the awareness of people, and also to connect it with the legacy of images, the photographs that we have in the next room that highlight the USSR, the power of totalitarianism, are a stark reminder of the attractiveness and the danger of powerful regimes, or what does power mean to us today.
I would like to point and make a statement first. We're looking at the gentleman, his name is Orensanz, who initiated this event. Andrei came here many times when he came to New York. He and Angel Orensanz were very good friends. They had discussions. They talk about Russia. They talk about Spain. And when Andrei died, of course, we were just, it was a terrible loss. And Al said that we would like to do something to memorize such outstanding poet. And that's how the whole idea of dedicating this festival to the memory of Andrei Voznesensky occurred. So I am just a messenger, and the author of event is Al Orensanz. But I actually met Andrei when he was a very sick man. He was still very much, had a great spirit, and he was. When we talked to him in Moscow, he was actually saying that New York is his, after Moscow, of course, is his town and his city. But he was already very not well. We actually did a project when Andrei permitted us to use his poetry about New York and other things when I did the exhibit of Angel Orensanz in Moscow Modern Art Museum. And Al has a possession of a book which he does not allow anybody to touch. There is something written by Andrei Voznesensky dedicated to Angel and Al. He does not let me touch it. This is like a holy book. And I would like also say that this place where you are present right now has a rich Russian history. Although originally it was built by congregation from Germany, but for the last over 100 years, right, it was run by Russians, and of course as a temple. Right now it is a cultural center, and I hope that under my influence we will have more and more things connected to Russian art here. And I convinced Al Orensanz to have an annual Russian Arts Festival. So this one is dedicated to the memory of Andrei Voznesensky.
When Al approached me, I actually approached Al and Angel because they were in a previous journal that we had published, same theme, our Center Point journal, and it was so well received then that I knew that Al would be a continuous participant in the journal. And then he mentioned about this great poet, and I had heard of him previously, but never, unfortunately, met him.
It's also especially significant that in this edition that you have a copy of was dedicated to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which celebrated its 60th anniversary in 2008. So it wasn't a random choice that Al suggested that we include Andrei's poetry and something about him in that edition. It was the legacy of human rights and of finding ways to express activism in peaceful ways, in ways that touch the heart and the soul. And we're just very grateful that we were able to do that.
He was ingenious in his poetry, in his attitude towards people, towards life in general, and he had such a keen eye that he wanted to be everything, and he was a philosopher, a poet, and an artist himself. And I was very lucky to meet him maybe like 17 years ago, and we were close friends for a couple of years, and then somehow life detached us. But anyway, I want to tell you how it happened. I'm a filmmaker, yes, and I used to make some programs for Russian TV, and one idea was to preserve, the gene of Russian culture. During this filming, he cited also this mantra that is which you can see in the poster. Mать, 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 mать. In Russian, this is transformation. Mать, it's like mother. And tma, it's darkness. And it's transformation from one word to another when you pronounce it endlessly. Mать, 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 mать. Mать as a motherland also, yeah. And our poor motherland, whom we love, of course. We love our mother. How can't we not to? Even I think dissidents somehow love this country, because it's impossible not to love somebody who gave birth to you, you know. But at the same time, it's such a difficult experience of all the people who lived there. So it's like a dark experience. And so It's a very philosophical thing that he did, and I'm so happy that you picked it up. Thank you, Angel. Also say hello to Angel and thank that, and this foundation that you organize it. It's a very important event that we remember Andrei Voznesensky now.
For the last several years, 3-4 years, I've been very kind of prompted to recognize that life comes back from the past. Let me put it this, I'm not going to tell you long, very short. Hegel wrote a sentence that then Karl Marx repeated, and is that history comes twice. First as tragedy, and then as comedy, right? Hegel gave us a new direction, and Karl Marx gave another direction in the introduction to the German ideology. Anyway, with Clara, we've been examining this in the life of this project, of the Orensanz Foundation. I'm going to tell you very quickly several instances in which there is a almost perfect parallel between the past and the present. And mind you, Russia is always there. Like if you go to a reader and she tells you your future in your hands. First instance, as soon as we open the doors upstairs, I mean, we will pull the cinder blocks of the doors that have been covering this building for the last 25 years, and it was only accessible to the vagrants and the drug dealers and the criminals. When we open the doors, then we discover the beauty of the space. And Angel, my brother, who is the one who purchased it and kind of forced me to be part of this project, came with this idea. I have to go to Russia. The truth of the matter is that we have not had any direct relationship with Russia, right? Except something that I'm not going to tell you, is a family situation with the civil war and anarchism in Spain and so forth. He was forced to go to Russia. Anyway, so Maria and I were left here with this big rain, and Angel left us here and he went to St. Petersburg. He met somebody who was already waiting for him in the big square in front of the Russian Museum. And since then, our connections with Russia have come on their own. Let me go to another moment. There was in New York City when Voznesensky was giving a lecture that in reality was a presentation of his poetry in a theater in Broadway. Vladimir Luzgin invited me to come to this poetry presentation of Voznesensky. The theater was full of people from all over the region, New Jersey, Connecticut, New York, Philadelphia, and so forth. And people were just one after the other asking, the bridge, and Voznesensky immediately will say the poem of the bridge. The water lilies, the poem of the water lilies. The clouds, and he would, people were the people. These were really the people talking about poetry and knowing the poetry of Voznesensky. It was emotional. He told her the story when he talked in front of Brezhnev, and he said something very inconvenient, and Brezhnev, without knowing that the microphone was on, said, "Send this guy out of the Soviet Union tomorrow." And he had at that time the tape of that communication by Brezhnev of Voznesensky from Russia. Anyway, it was a memorable night, and then I have personally an occasion to meet him in his hotel, and we spoke, and and from there I got most of the material for the center point. So since then, I have always liked his poetry. Voznesensky's verses for me are something of the most pure expression of the feelings. He represents both the tradition, the countryside of Russia, the life of the small cities in Russia, but as well the life of the metropolis, the connection between the forces of change for the better of the worse and the forces of tradition in Russia. So he's the person who possibly connects both worlds. The change, sometimes with a bad ending, as we can see in the room next door, the gallery next door, and with this force of life. I have an occasion in which through Vladimir I was able to talk to Zoe Zaretskaya, his wife, that has been very, very important in the presentation tonight. And I think that our memories and prayers and reminiscences and love will have to God, to her, because she's been such an incredible support for the life, the very tender life of our poet, right? In the sense that she has been made possible, that his life were extended until this very moment.
Dear readers and admirers of the poetry of Andrei Voznesensky, I'm very sorry that this evening I cannot be with you. I'm very grateful to the Angel Orensanz Foundation for organizing this wonderful event to honor the untimely demise of my beloved husband. It is extremely remarkable that this poetic evening takes place in the city of New York, which he had in his heart as the second birthplace after Russia. 29 years ago, when Andrei first came to America, he reflected his impressions on this great country in his poem Triangle Pair, dedicated to Arthur Miller, Allen Ginsberg, and to the American Friends beatnik poets, and especially to Joseph Brodsky, his most dear friend and great Russian poet then living in New York. I vividly remember how Andrei got elected to the American Academy of Arts and received the mantle of honorary professor in the city of Philadelphia. He really enjoyed the attention of being honored by all admirers of his poetry. Andrei had many friend artists in New York. Angel Orensanz was one of them. Every time Andrei and Angel met, they talked endlessly about Russia and Spain, Russian and Spanish music, theater, and other art links connecting Russia and Spain. Andrei loved Angel's ultra-radical arts because Andrei himself was very modern and radical. Modern means present time. Today it is very hard for me to talk about Andrei in the past tense. Andrei will always remain in my memory as the ultimate expression of love and poetic beauty. Happiness to all of you, always with you, Zoya Boguslavskaya.